I'm sorry, Liam, but this is a family event, and you're not family. Those were the exact words my boss said to me after 6 years of loyalty, dedication, and sacrifice. He looked me straight in the eye and dismissed me like I was just another name on a list. I stood there, in his office, stunned. My hands clenched at my sides, my mouth dry. I thought it was a joke. It had to be. My name's Liam. I've worked as Raymond Hartley's executive assistant since I was 23. His company wasn't a flashy tech startup or some high-end corporation. It was a family-run business that prided itself on values and connection. And for years, I believed I was a part of that family. I stayed late, came in early, ran errands that weren't even in my job description. I helped him navigate his divorce, comforted his daughter Chloe when her fiancé ghosted her, and even drove Raymond to the hospital at 2 a.m. when he had chest pains. They called me family until they didn't. Raymond's daughter, Chloe, was getting married in 2 weeks. I had helped plan parts of the wedding myself, coordinating logistics, tracking guest lists, even vetting vendors. I knew everything, down to the color of the napkins and the layout of the ceremony. But when I casually asked Raymond what time the rehearsal dinner was, he looked at me with a strange hesitation. Then he gave me that line. That "you're not family" line. I blinked. Wait, I'm not invited. He shifted in his leather chair and smiled, like he was offering a polite excuse at a networking event. We had to make some tough calls, Liam. The guest list got tight. Tight? I repeated. You're inviting over 200 people, and I'm not one of them? It's nothing personal, he said with a shrug. You understand. I didn't. I left his office without another word, walked past the framed photos of company barbecues, holiday parties, and the giant one in the lobby of Raymond shaking hands with me after my promotion last year. That night, I stared at the wedding invite list, which I still had access to since I'd built the spreadsheet. Not only was I excluded, but he had invited former interns, vendors, even his golf buddies. I wasn't family anymore. I was disposable. The next day, I cleaned out my personal files. Not because I was quitting, but because something in me shifted. I wasn't going to beg for inclusion anymore. I wasn't going to stand in the background, silently supporting people who treated me like a tool they could use and then toss aside. Raymond thought I wasn't family. Fine. Then he would see what happens when the person who knew everything about his company, his secrets, and his dirty little financial habits decided to stop being loyal. And yes, he had secrets. See, over the years, I'd seen things. Unfiled reports, questionable expenses, payments labeled under vendor bonuses that didn't match any real transaction. I didn't say anything because I trusted him, because I believed I was on the inside. But I wasn't. Later that night, I booked a luxury trip to Italy. 5-star villa, wine tasting tours, private drivers, the works. If they didn't want me at the wedding, I was going to be somewhere better. Before logging off my computer for the night, I pulled up the Instagram page for the company and posted a photo of me holding a wine glass from an old vacation with the caption, "When you're not family enough for a wedding invite, but just right for Tuscany." The comments came fast. Some were amused, others confused. A few former coworkers messaged me directly, asking what had happened. One reply stood out. "You seriously weren't invited? After everything? That's messed up." I smiled for the first time that day, but just as I was about to turn off my phone, a new message popped up on my screen, one that made my heart stop. It was from Chloe, and all it said was, "Liam, please don't do anything stupid. You don't know what you're walking into." I stared at the screen. What the hell was that supposed to mean? I stared at Chloe's message for a long time. "Liam, please don't do anything stupid. You don't know what you're walking into." I didn't even know how to process that. Was it a threat, a warning, or some last-minute guilt trip? Either way, it didn't sit right with me. The irony wasn't lost on me. She hadn't said a word in months. No thank you when I helped her prep her resume. No check-in after her panic attack during a board meeting that I helped cover up. And now, out of nowhere, this? I locked my phone and dropped it on the counter. I didn't reply. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't rattle me. The next morning, I boarded my flight to Florence. First class, champagne, Italian opera humming through the cabin speakers. I tried to relax. I really did, but that message kept echoing in my head. You don't know what you're walking into. By the time I arrived at the villa, the tension in my shoulders was still there. The place was breathtaking. Rolling hills, cypress trees, golden light bathing the terracotta rooftops. But I couldn't shake the sense that something was off. I poured a glass of wine and walked out onto the terrace. The wedding was only a few days away. Back in the States, I imagined Raymond giving some smug toast about loyalty and legacy, pretending like I hadn't been the backbone of that business for 6 years. I opened my laptop. I still had access to the company's internal server. Raymond had forgotten to revoke it. A rookie mistake. Maybe he assumed I'd quietly disappear. I clicked into the financial archives. Everything was still there. The off-book payments, the inflated vendor contracts, the consulting fees that led to shell accounts I'd always been suspicious of. And that's when I saw something new. A wire transfer labeled Event Expansion, Hartley Wedding. Over $300,000. My jaw tightened. He hadn't just excluded me from the wedding. He had used company money to fund it. Investor money. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding. I knew this wasn't just unethical, it was potentially criminal. I took screenshots, zipped the files, and backed them up in 3 different drives. I wasn't planning to use them. Not yet. But now I had leverage. That night, I made my first public post. Just a soft nudge. I uploaded a photo of me holding a glass of Chianti on a balcony, with the caption, "Cheers to being not family, and free enough to enjoy real peace." Within hours, the comments rolled in. Is this about the Hartley wedding? I heard rumors. Spill it, Liam. Wait, weren't you their assistant? I didn't reply, but people were talking. The next morning, I received a message from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Brandon, one of the junior investors in the company. He'd always liked me, trusted me. His message, "Hey, I know this is random, but I just got a weird feeling. Did Hartley touch the company accounts for that wedding?" I froze. I hadn't said a word, but somehow people were starting to suspect. I typed a careful reply. Let's just say I've seen things. Might be time to ask the right questions. I didn't realize it then, but that message would start a chain reaction I couldn't stop. 2 hours later, Brandon messaged again. Board meeting called. Emergency. Raymond's acting nervous. I smiled for the first time all day. But then, something I wasn't expecting happened. A second message from Chloe. This time longer. I didn't know Dad was doing that. I swear. But Liam, if you leak anything, he'll destroy you. You know he will, just, please don't. That one hit different. Not because I felt pity, but because it told me something crucial. She knew I had proof, and she was afraid. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just someone they dismissed. I was someone they feared. And fear, I've learned, is a powerful weapon. I should have felt nervous. I had evidence that could implode a company. My former boss, Raymond Hartley, had embezzled over $300,000 of investor funds to pay for his daughter's wedding, and I had every receipt to prove it. But instead of fear, I felt a slow-burning satisfaction rising in my chest. For years, I was the fixer, the silent support, the invisible man behind their success. And now, they were spiraling because I'd stopped cleaning up their messes. That same night, I got an encrypted email from Brandon. He wasn't just some junior investor. He was part of a syndicate that had invested over 7 figures into Hartley Holdings. His message was blunt. If you have what I think you have, now's the time. I didn't reply right away. I stared at my screen, heart pounding. Chloe's warning echoed in my head. He'll destroy you. But what did I have left to lose? They'd already discarded me like I was nothing. I zipped the files, uploaded them to a secure drive, and sent Brandon a single link. 2 hours later, I got another message. Board just suspended Raymond. Temporary audit begins tomorrow. I nearly dropped my wine glass. It was happening, faster than I expected, but I wasn't ready for what came next. Around midnight, I heard pounding on the door of my villa. I froze. I wasn't expecting visitors. The concierge hadn't mentioned anything. I approached slowly, heart thudding. When I looked through the peephole, my jaw dropped. It was Chloe. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her makeup was smudged, hair in a mess, and she was alone. I opened the door a crack. "What the hell are you doing here?" I asked. "I flew here," she said, breathless. "We need to talk, please." Against my better judgment, I let her in. She sat down without asking, hands trembling. "They're blaming me," she said. "The board thinks I knew about the money. Dad told them it was my idea." I scoffed. "Wasn't it you who told me not to do anything stupid?" "I didn't know," she snapped. "Liam, I swear, I thought it was personal savings. I never saw the accounts." I folded my arms. "So now that the ship is sinking, you suddenly remember I exist?" She looked at me, eyes glassy. "You were always the only one who kept things together. I was wrong. I let Dad treat you like an assistant instead of what you really were. Family." That word hit hard. Now I was family? Too little. Too late. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. I stared at it. Inside were documents, but not the kind I expected. "Liam, this isn't just about the money," she said softly. "You need to see this." I flipped through the folder, and my blood ran cold. They weren't financials. They were emails, screenshots, transcripts, between Raymond and a private investigator. Dozens of messages, spanning months. Most recent dated just 3 days ago. All about me. Tracking my flights, monitoring my social media, even emails about trying to retrieve sensitive files from his device without detection. I looked up at her, stunned. "You're telling me your father hired someone to spy on me?" She nodded, tears finally falling. "He said you knew too much, that if you turned on him, everything would collapse. He's desperate, and now that the board suspended him, he's not going to back down." I sat there, stunned. Raymond hadn't just cut me out. He had planned to destroy me. Everything made sense now. The sudden change in tone, the threats, the way Chloe warned me without saying too much. I thought I was holding all the power, but I was just a few steps ahead of a man who was willing to do anything to protect himself. I stood up slowly, rage twisting in my gut. "I gave that man 6 years of my life," I said, "and now he's coming after me in secret?" Chloe grabbed my wrist. "I came here because I want to help you. You don't deserve this." I looked down at her hand. Something had changed. I didn't see the girl I used to rescue. I saw someone trapped in a burning house she helped build. Then my phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. "We know what you did. You're not safe." I read that message 5 times in a row. "We know what you did. You're not safe." No name, no context, just a direct threat. I looked up at Chloe. Her face had gone pale. She hadn't seen the message yet, but she knew. I could see it in her eyes. "He has people watching me, doesn't he?" I asked. She hesitated, then gave a slight nod. "He hired someone weeks ago. When you started posting pictures from Italy, he lost it. Said you were trying to sabotage his legacy and that you needed to be contained. Contained." That word made my stomach turn. I turned away from her and walked to the balcony. The view was stunning, rolling vineyards under the setting sun, but I could barely breathe. Raymond wasn't just a corrupt boss anymore. He was a cornered man. And cornered men are dangerous. But so am I. I took a deep breath. If he thought I'd cower, he clearly didn't know me as well as I knew him. "Get some sleep, Chloe," I said coldly. "I need to make a call." She tried to protest, but I waved her off. She left quietly. I locked the door behind her, pulled out my laptop, and connected to my private server. I'd kept this folder untouched until now. The insurance file. Everything I'd ever flagged but never shared. And now it was time. That night, I drafted an anonymous email with a direct link to the documents. Fraudulent financial records, false tax filings, a list of shell companies registered under Raymond's offshore aliases, screenshots of him instructing me to manipulate client data. Then I added one more file, a recording, a voice memo I'd forgotten I even had. It was from a year ago when Raymond had too much whiskey during a business dinner and rambled on about milking the investors until the bubble bursts. I scheduled the email to be delivered to every board member, investor, and legal oversight agency connected to the company. The time set, 4 p.m. Saturday, wedding day. Raymond had taken something personal, so now I would make this very, very public. The next morning, Chloe was gone. No note, no message. I wasn't surprised, but by noon, my phone lit up like wildfire. News outlets, industry blogs, LinkedIn chatter. The rumor mill was spinning. Then Brandon messaged me again. Liam, he's denying everything. Says it's a smear campaign. Board is split. I smirked. That was the thing about Raymond. He was a master manipulator, but he underestimated one detail. I wasn't working alone. 2 days ago, I had forwarded a full copy of the files to someone else. Someone Raymond had wronged even worse than me. Mara Chen. She was the former CFO. Raymond forced her out a year ago after she refused to sign off on doctored reports. She disappeared quietly, but I found her. She had receipts of her own, and more bitterness than even I carried. So we teamed up, and while Raymond was busy trying to crush me, Mara went to the press. The headline hit at 3 p.m. Hartley Empire built on fraud. Whistleblower CFO breaks silence. And the email blast? Sent an hour later. I sat back in my villa, watching the chaos unfold on every screen. Raymond's reputation collapsed in real time. Sponsors pulled out. The board held an emergency vote. But that wasn't the best part. At 5:12 p.m., Brandon sent one last message. Liam, they canceled the wedding. Groom backed out. Chloe's gone. Raymond is having a full meltdown at the venue. I laughed out loud. Not a bitter laugh, but something deeper. A release. But then, something I never saw coming. A new message. From a burner email. No name, no subject. Just one file attached. Curious, I opened it. Security footage. From the company server. In the video, Raymond was in his office. Furious, screaming, throwing things. Then, he opened a drawer and pulled out a passport, cash, and plane tickets. He was planning to flee the country. My hands were trembling as I watched the footage again. Raymond, in his office, ripping open a drawer, stuffing a passport, a stack of cash, and 2 plane tickets into a duffel bag. He wasn't just panicking, he was running. After everything he'd done, the fraud, the lies, the surveillance, even trying to frame me, he was about to vanish and let everyone else carry the fallout. I knew I had 2 options. 1, let him disappear. 2, make sure he never got the chance. I chose the second. Within 20 minutes, I was on the phone with Brandon and Mara. I sent them the video. Neither of them hesitated. Mara called a friend at the SEC. Brandon notified internal counsel. I contacted a private investigator I knew in Florence, someone who could move fast and keep things quiet. By nightfall, everything was in motion. I got word the next morning. Raymond had booked a private jet to take off from a small regional airstrip, 2 hours before the Monday board hearing. He was planning to disappear just before everything hit the legal fan. But here's the thing about criminals who've had power too long. They always forget one thing. People are watching. As he arrived at the airstrip, Raymond stepped out of his car, dressed in casual clothes and sunglasses, trying to blend in like a tourist. But he wasn't alone. 2 plainclothes investigators were waiting. So was Brandon. So was Mara. And less than 60 seconds later, 2 federal agents pulled up. They walked straight toward him. Calm. Professional. I wasn't there, but I've seen the footage. He looked stunned, like the world had betrayed him. He said something. I imagine it was a lie. Maybe one of the many he'd used to twist the truth for years. But none of it mattered, because the agents reached into their jackets and handcuffed him on the spot. The official charges included wire fraud, securities fraud, misuse of corporate funds, attempted obstruction of an internal investigation. But honestly, the worst punishment wasn't legal. It was what came after. Raymond's face was plastered all over business news within hours. Former CEO arrested in corporate fraud scandal. Sponsors dropped his name like poison. The company stock plummeted. The board dissolved his voting shares. And as for Chloe, she went radio silent, completely vanished from public view. I heard she moved in with her aunt in Boston. The wedding? Never rescheduled. The groom? Long gone. She never contacted me again. And I didn't reach out either, because I was done being the cleanup crew for people who treated me like I didn't matter. I returned home a week later. My apartment was exactly as I'd left it. Quiet, clean, peaceful. No knocks on the door, no desperate phone calls, no fires to put out. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen. A few days after I got back, a letter arrived in my mailbox. No return address, just a single sentence on the card inside. You really weren't just an assistant, were you? There was no name, but I knew who it was from. I smiled, placed the card on my shelf, and poured myself a drink. Because in the end, revenge didn't come from yelling. It didn't come from confrontation. It came from letting the truth do the screaming for me. Raymond thought he could erase me from the picture. But I didn't just step out of the frame. I painted a whole new canvas. And now, he gets to stare at it from a courtroom bench. So, if you've ever been told you're not family, remember this. Sometimes the people they push away are the very ones who hold the power to bring it all down. Comment the number 3 if you loved this ending and want more real-life revenge stories like this. And don't forget to subscribe. There's always another story coming.